A secret crush romance written by Serena Hart. Prologue. Evelyn Hart thought marriage to Adrian Cross, the cold heir of a powerful empire, would one day bloom into love. Instead, it became a gilded cage of humiliation and silence. After years of being nothing more than a name on his arm, she dares to shatter the chains with one word: divorce. But breaking free of a cross means stepping into fire. The world is watching her every move: the ruthless tabloids, the jealous rival Serena Ward, the legendary actor Gabriel Knight who sees in her what Adrian never did. For the first time, Evelyn must decide who she is without the weight of a husband's shadow. And yet Adrian Cross is not a man who lets go. His empire is steel, his pride unbreakable, but losing Evelyn may be the one battle he cannot afford. Torn between control and confession, Adrian must confront the truth he has buried for years, that the wife he dismissed is the only woman he cannot live without. Chapter 1. The Station in the Rain. The rain had been falling since dawn, relentless and heavy, as though the sky itself conspired to wash her away. Evelyn Hart stood at Rosemont Central Station with her suitcase at her feet, her dark hair plastered against her face, her coat soaked through. She didn't even bother to shield herself anymore. What difference did it make if she caught a chill? No one was waiting at home to care. The hiss of brakes cut through the downpour. A sleek black car slid to the curb, the kind of vehicle that turned heads even in a city like Rosemont. The driver stepped out, umbrella in hand, and without a word opened the rear door for her. Evelyn hesitated, her stomach knotting. Of course he had sent a car. Appearances must always be maintained, even when the marriage behind them was nothing more than a contract. She gathered her suitcase, lifted her chin, and stepped inside. The leather smelled faintly of smoke and cedarwood, his scent. Adrian Cross sat there, immaculate as ever in his tailored suit, one hand resting against the window, the other loosely gripping the edge of his knee. His gaze flicked to her, sharp and cool, before sliding away again. "You're late," he said flatly. She pressed her damp coat tighter around herself, refusing to shrink beneath his tone. The train was delayed. He exhaled slowly, the faintest trace of irritation clouding his expression. Then his next words landed like ice against her skin. "You should understand something, Evelyn. Our arrangement remains what it always has been. You're my wife in name and nothing more. I will see other women. If that offends you, I suggest you find a way to stop caring." Her throat tightened. She had braced herself for cruelty. Adrian never failed to remind her of her place, but hearing it spoken aloud so callously still cut deep. She stared at him, eyes burning, yet forced her voice to stay even. "You didn't need to come yourself just to tell me that." The corner of his mouth twitched, but it wasn't amusement. "I came because my grandfather insists. He believes it's necessary to present a united front. You'll play the part when required." "And the rest of the time?" she asked softly. His gaze finally snapped back to hers, storm gray and unyielding. "The rest of the time, Evelyn, you're free to do as you wish. As long as it doesn't involve embarrassing me." There it was, the cage disguised as freedom. He offered her all the space in the world as long as she never crossed the invisible lines he drew. She wondered briefly if he even realized how cruelly ironic it sounded. The silence between them thickened, broken only by the rhythm of rain striking the roof. Evelyn shifted her gaze out the window, watching the blurred lights of Rosemont streak past. She told herself she wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of him. Not anymore. When she had first married Adrian Cross, she had been young enough to believe that love might eventually grow. She had clung to hope during the endless dinners where he ignored her, through the gossip that whispered she was nothing but the gardener's daughter playing wife. She had endured humiliation after humiliation, thinking perhaps if she endured long enough, he might see her. But that illusion had withered. And tonight, as the car sped through the rain-soaked city, Evelyn Hart decided she was done. She would divorce him. The thought crystallized like steel within her chest. It terrified her. He was a Cross, heir to an empire, a man who could destroy her career with a single phone call. But it also set her heart hammering with something she hadn't felt in years, the faintest trace of freedom. Her hand drifted to the necklace at her throat, the diamond gift he had given her on their wedding night. It had been chosen by his assistant, she later discovered, and he had never once looked to see if she wore it. Slowly, deliberately, Evelyn unclasped it. The diamonds glittered briefly in her palm before she let them fall into her coat pocket. A gesture small enough to go unnoticed, yet to her, it was everything. Adrian's eyes flickered at the movement. He said nothing, but she saw the slight tightening of his jaw. He noticed more than he admitted. Always had. The car finally turned into the wrought iron gates of the Cross estate. The mansion loomed against the storm, its lights glowing cold and distant. Evelyn felt the weight of its walls pressing down on her even before she stepped inside. The driver opened her door. Adrian didn't move to help her. He never did. She gathered her things and walked into the house without waiting for him, the marble floor echoing beneath her soaked shoes. Every surface gleamed, every chandelier sparkled, yet the place felt emptier than any station bench. Upstairs, she closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She pulled the necklace from her pocket, stared at it one last time, then set it firmly on the dresser. A symbol of everything she refused to carry anymore. She whispered the words aloud, tasting their power for the first time. I want a divorce. No one heard her in the silence of the room. But she heard herself. And that was enough. Evelyn crossed to the mirror, studying the reflection that looked back at her. Damp hair, pale skin, tired eyes. She didn't look like the woman she wanted to be. But she would. She would rebuild herself, one step at a time, even if it meant tearing her entire world apart. Downstairs, she heard the faint clink of glass, the unmistakable sound of Adrian pouring himself a drink. She wondered if he sensed the shift in her resolve, if he realized that for the first time she no longer feared him. The storm outside raged on. But inside Evelyn Hart, a different storm had begun, a storm that would change everything. Morning scraped a pale line across the Cross estate as if the sun too were reluctant to enter. Evelyn woke to the soft throb of a headache and the firmer ache of a decision. She showered, twisted her hair into a low knot, and dressed in a black turtleneck and jeans, the kind of clothes that made her easy to overlook. She had calls to make. Resolve at last outweighed fear. She would not look back. Not ever. Adrian was already at the breakfast table, reading the financial pages as if wars and weddings existed solely to tilt the markets. A cup of coffee steamed beside him. He did not look up when she entered. The silence between them was habitual. Good morning, she said, passing toward the garden door. She needed air. Sit, he said without inflection. I have errands. He folded the paper, finally meeting her eyes. His gaze skimmed over her, the missing necklace, the bare mouth, the steady chin. We have an event tonight. Starlight Club. My grandfather expects you there. The last time I went, she replied, Serena told a reporter I was a placeholder ring. You said nothing. It was not the time. It never is. She set a crisp envelope on the table. This is. He slid it, drew out the petition, and for a heartbeat even the steam halted. You're serious. I am. He leaned back, attention narrowing. On what grounds? On the ground that I want a life, she said. Divide whatever you like. I don't want your money. I want independence. A flicker, surprise, crossed his face. He laid the papers down with careful hands. Divorce is not a word you understand once you've said it. I understand perfectly. She allowed herself a thin smile. Thank you for the lesson last night. He flinched so slightly most would miss it. She turned for the door. Why now? Because I finally believe I deserve better than being an ornamental ghost. Outside, autumn cooled the garden. Evelyn walked to the bench by the butterfly bushes, where last summer wings flickered. Beneath her sleeve rested the small butterfly tattoo at her wrist, inked on a lonely night to keep. She touched it, breathed, and called Clara Lewis. You sound like a woman on a cliff, her manager said, skipping hello. Clara always listened for weather. I'm jumping, Evelyn said. I filed. Silence, then a satisfied exhale. At last. We have movement. Silverlight wants you to read for a script. Working title Emberline. The director likes your instincts. And Gabriel Knight's team reached out. Evelyn blinked. Gabriel Knight? He saw your little indie from 2 years ago. Apparently he hasn't forgotten the way you look into a camera like you intend to disarm it. He's mentoring a project at Rosemont Film City and wants to meet. Heat rose that had nothing to do with humiliation. I'll be there by noon. Wear red, Clara said. You disappear when you're trying not to be seen. Today is the opposite. Evelyn ended the call and watched a monarch wobble, its flight fragile and stubborn. She pressed her palm over the tattoo, smiled, and went to change. By noon she was sliding from a rideshare into the mirror-bright lobby of Silverlight Media. The air smelled of citrus and ambition. A receptionist handed her a badge without asking her last name. Clara materialized in a navy blazer and a grin. You look different, Clara said, tugging the sleeve of the scarlet wrap dress Evelyn had chosen. Alive. That would be oxygen, Evelyn said. It circulates better when you stop holding your breath. Keep that wit for the reading. Clara's voice softened. You're doing the right thing. They had 5 minutes. In that time, Serena Ward swept through the lobby in champagne silk, assistants orbiting. She pivoted, eyes widening before a blade-thin smile slipped into place. Well, if it isn't Mrs. Cross, Serena purred. Did your husband misplace you again? Evelyn's spine aligned. I'm not lost. Serena's gaze dipped to the red dress, then the bare throat. No necklace? That's almost honest. She stepped closer. There's talk of restructuring at Crosswell. Some roles disappear overnight. Clara stepped forward, but Evelyn touched her arm. Thanks for the warning, she told Serena. I'll save fear for worthier monsters. Annoyance flickered. See you at the Starlight Club, Serena said, already gliding toward cameras. The audition room was colder, smaller, honest. A camera, a mark on the floor, a woman with a pen poised like an arrow. Evelyn stood on the tape, let her heart settle, and read sides about a woman who refused to apologize for surviving. When she finished, the pen lowered. Thank you, Ms. Hart, the woman said. Professional code for good. In the hallway, Evelyn's phone vibrated. A known number, Starlight Club. It. Or something appropriate. AC. She typed, deleted, then wrote, not attending. It. Reply immediate. This is not a request. AC. Her pulse leaped. Anger, habit. She inhaled, slow, deliberate, and sent. Then find another actress to stand beside you. It. Silence, tasting like victory and risk. Ready for Gabriel? Clara asked. Ready, Evelyn said and meant it. Rosemont Film City sprawled like a small country of light. Gabriel Knight met them outside Studio B, all crinkled eyes and ocean-calm voice. Evelyn Hart, he said, as if greeting a solution he had waited to find. Walk with me. They paced between sound stages. He asked about process and hunger. She told him a little truth and held the rest close. At the studio door he paused. People will call you brave. Brave isn't the point. The point is whether you're ready to be seen. Evelyn lifted her chin. I am. Across the city, high in Crosswell's glass tower, Adrian stared at her final text until the words cut through armor he had mistaken for sense. He set the petition down, drew a monarch in the corner without thinking. The wings looked like a promise he did not yet know how to keep. Chapter 2, Lines in the Sand. The Cross estate was vast, yet Evelyn felt suffocated as if every gilded wall pressed inward. Her declaration of divorce hung in the air like smoke, seeping into corners, impossible to ignore. Adrian hadn't answered, hadn't said yes, hadn't said no. That silence was louder than a storm. By morning he had already gone to the office. The only evidence he'd been there at all was the faint trace of cigar smoke that lingered in the study. Evelyn stood in the doorway, staring at the glass of whiskey left half-finished on his desk. It was unusual. Adrian never left things undone. Clara arrived at 10 sharp, striding into the foyer with her tote bag swinging. Ready? She asked briskly, scanning Evelyn from head to toe. She seemed pleased by the fitted cream blouse and navy slacks Evelyn had chosen. Polished. Professional. A woman not begging to be someone's ornament. Yes, Evelyn said. She had woken with steel in her spine, though beneath it trembled nerves. Filing papers was one thing. Facing the world without the cross-name shield, no matter how cold it had been, was another. Good. Clara tapped her phone. We've got a strategy meeting at Silverlight. They want to push you for Emberline, but we'll need to play it carefully. Serena's lobbying hard for the same role. Of course she is, Evelyn muttered, reaching for her coat. Serena always appeared like smoke, curling into every space Evelyn tried to claim. Don't underestimate her connections, Clara warned as they stepped outside. But don't underestimate yourself either. Talent cuts deeper than gossip if you use it right. The car ride to Rosemont Film City blurred by in a haze of traffic and nerves. Outside the window, Evelyn glimpsed billboards of glittering faces. Serena in a perfume campaign, Gabriel Knight's profile under the words Academy Award winner. How far away she seemed from all of them, yet how fiercely she wanted to stand among them, not as a wife hidden in shadows but as Evelyn Hart, actress. Silverlight's offices thrummed with energy. Assistants hurried down halls with coffee trays, agents barked into phones, posters of past blockbusters lined the walls. Evelyn straightened her shoulders as Clara led her through. Eyes turned, some curious, some dismissive. The whispers weren't hard to imagine. Cross's unwanted wife. Playing at independence. She refused to flinch. In the boardroom, the air smelled of polish and ambition. The director of Emberline, a woman with sharp glasses and sharper eyes, greeted her coolly. Evelyn Hart, she said, her voice measured. Thank you for coming. Thank you for considering me, Evelyn replied. Her palms tingled with nerves, but her voice held steady. They discussed character arcs, filming schedules, marketing strategies. Evelyn answered each question with clarity, her instincts honed by years of watching from the sidelines. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was heard. When the meeting ended, Clara squeezed her arm, a subtle well done. Evelyn's heart lifted. But as they stepped into the lobby, the high vanished. Serena Ward was waiting. Draped in ivory silk, her hair cascading like spun gold, Serena looked every inch the star. Cameras flashed. A cluster of reporters leaned in as she smiled sweetly. Evelyn. Serena called, her voice dripping sugar. What a surprise to see you here. Did Adrian finally let you off your leash? The reporters laughed softly, pens scratching. Clara stiffened, but Evelyn forced herself to remain calm. She stepped closer, the red lipstick she'd chosen gleaming like defiance. I'm here because of my talent, Serena, she said, clear enough for the microphones. Not because of a last name. For a beat, the room stilled. A murmur rippled. Serena's smile faltered just slightly before she recovered with a toss of her hair. We'll see, she said lightly before turning her attention to the cameras, leaving Evelyn to walk out with her head held high. Outside, the autumn air felt like triumph. Small, fragile triumph, but real. Not bad, Clara said. Not bad at all. That will make headlines. Evelyn laughed softly, almost disbelieving. For once, the headlines might carry her name without his. They moved on to Rosemont Film City, where the day held its next challenge, meeting Gabriel Knight. Evelyn's nerves spiked again, but Clara's steady presence grounded her. Remember, Clara said as they walked the lot. He's not a god. He's an actor. You belong here as much as he does. Studio B loomed ahead, bustling with crew. Gabriel emerged from the crowd, tall and relaxed, his smile warm enough to melt the frost of nerves. He extended his hand. Miss Hart. I've been waiting to meet you. His grip was firm, respectful. His eyes, deep and knowing, carried none of Adrian's cold calculation. Your performance in Shadows and Ashes was remarkable, he said. You carried grief with such subtlety, it stayed with me. Heat crept to her cheeks. That tiny indie film had been her secret treasure, the only role that had ever let her be. To hear Gabriel Knight praise it felt surreal. Thank you, she said softly. That means a lot. They spoke of craft, of the discipline it demanded, of the quiet violence of vulnerability on screen. Gabriel listened intently, asked questions that mattered. And when he smiled at her answers, Evelyn felt something stir. A recognition maybe that she could be more than she had ever been allowed to believe. Clara watched from the sidelines, satisfied. The pieces were shifting. Evelyn was no longer background. But elsewhere in Rosemont, Adrian Cross sat in his office. The divorce petition spread across his desk like a wound. He read Evelyn's words again and again. I want independence. I want divorce. The letters carved into him, relentless. His grandfather had called that morning, his voice rough with authority. Do not be a fool, Adrian. If you let her go, you'll regret it more than you know. Adrian had bristled. Regret was weakness. He was Croswell steel. Yet now, as rain streaked the office windows, he found himself remembering the flash of Evelyn's red dress, the fire in her eyes when she defied Serena. He had dismissed her as plain once. He could no longer. But pride was a fortress. And Adrian Cross did not know how to step outside its walls without shattering. So he poured himself another drink, the smoke curling around him, and told himself he didn't care. Even as his chest burned with something dangerously close to fear. Evening in Rosemont was a performance in itself. Neon spilled across wet streets, the hum of traffic a restless soundtrack, and in the heart of it all, the Starlight Club glittered like a jewel set too high to reach. Tonight, it held the city's elite, executives, actors, politicians, each playing their roles beneath chandeliers and champagne flutes. Evelyn had no intention of going. Her defiance had been clear in her text to Adrian. Yet as she stood in front of her mirror, fastening the final clasp of her dress, she realized she couldn't stay away either. Not because he commanded it, but because she wanted to face him on her own terms. If she stayed home, the whispers would win. If she appeared, radiant and untouchable, she would write her own headline. The gown she chose was a scarlet sheath with a daring slit, the fabric clinging like flame. Clara's voice echoed in her head. Wear red. Stop disappearing. Evelyn's pulse quickened as she slipped on her heels. This wasn't the gardener's daughter, humiliated and ignored. This was a woman who knew her worth. When she arrived, the valet blinked twice before rushing to take her keys. Reporters clustered at the entrance like vultures, their cameras flashing wildly when they recognized her. Evelyn Hart. Over here, someone called. She smiled faintly, turned her face to the light and walked forward. Every step was deliberate, a silent proclamation. She was no longer invisible. Inside, the club gleamed with crystal and gold. Music swelled from the grand piano, laughter tinkled like glass breaking. And at the center of it all stood Adrian Cross, tall, severe, devastating in a black suit. His hand rested loosely on a glass of bourbon, his other in his pocket. He looked up the instant she entered. His eyes, gray and unreadable, darkened as they swept over her. For a heartbeat, the crowd dissolved, and it was only them. Evelyn forced herself to keep walking, chin lifted, as though his gaze couldn't scorch her. Serena Ward materialized first, a vision in sapphire silk. She linked her arm through Adrian's as if she belonged there. Evelyn, she purred, her smile dagger sharp. What a pleasant surprise. I thought you had other obligations. Evelyn let her eyes rest briefly on their entwined arms. And I thought you had better manners, she replied evenly. Gasps fluttered nearby, delighted by the confrontation. Serena's smile froze. Adrian, however, said nothing. His fingers flexed against the glass, but he didn't remove his arm from Serena's. That cut deeper than Evelyn expected. A reporter edged close, microphone raised. Mrs. Cross, may we ask about rumors of a split? Evelyn inhaled slowly. Here it was, the moment to cower or to claim herself. She turned, eyes blazing into the camera, and said clearly, there is no rumor. I am filing for divorce. The room stilled. Flashes erupted, a frenzy of light. Clara, standing at the edge, widened her eyes but didn't intervene. Evelyn held her ground, the scarlet fabric glowing beneath the chandeliers. Adrian's glass shattered. His grip had snapped the crystal clean in half, amber bourbon dripping across his knuckles. The sound rang through the hush. Every head turned back to him. She's my wife, he said, his voice low and deadly, carrying across the marble floor. Do not mistake her words for freedom. A shiver swept through the crowd. Evelyn's chest clenched, fury igniting. She strode forward, ignoring Serena's startled protest, until she stood eye to eye with him. Do not mistake my silence for consent, she shot back. Gasps rippled again. Serena paled, stepping back. Adrian's gaze bore into Evelyn's, storm against fire, and for a moment, the world narrowed to nothing but their battle. Enough, he muttered, grabbing her wrist. His touch was firm, unyielding, but not cruel. He pulled her through the murmuring throng, past velvet curtains, into a private corridor that smelled of oak and smoke. She yanked free the second the door closed behind them. Don't you ever humiliate me like that again. Humiliate you? His voice sharpened, incredulous. You announced a divorce to half of Rosemont's press like it was theater. It was truth, she hissed. And the only stage I have is the one I build for myself. His jaw tightened. A drop of bourbon slid down his wrist, gleaming like blood. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Cross name. I don't care about the Cross name. Her voice cracked, but it was with strength, not weakness. I care about dignity. About not being paraded beside you while you let Serena whisper poison into reporters' ears. I care about not being told that my only role is to stand pretty and stay silent. He stepped closer, eyes burning. And what about what I care about? She faltered, caught by the unexpected rawness in his tone. Then say it, she challenged. If you care, say it. If not, let me go. His throat worked, words forming and dying in silence. His pride was a fortress with no gate. At last, he exhaled hard, turning away, pressing a hand to the wall as if to steady himself. You drive me mad, he admitted hoarsely, the closest he had ever come to confession. For an instant, Evelyn's heart lurched. But she steeled herself. Madness isn't love, Adrian. And I won't chain myself to it anymore. She brushed past him, her heels striking sharp against the floor, leaving him with shattered glass and unsaid truths. Back in the main hall, whispers swarmed like bees. Clara intercepted her, whispering fiercely, Do you know what you just did? You've turned yourself into the story. Good, Evelyn said, though her chest still quaked. Let them talk. At least this time they'll be talking about me, not as his wife but as me. As she exited into the night, cameras flashing once more, she realized she had crossed a threshold. There was no returning to silence, no crawling back into the shadows of Crosswell Holdings. The divorce papers were no longer just a private rebellion. They were a declaration of war. Above, the rain had cleared. Stars pricked the velvet sky, fragile and fierce. Evelyn lifted her face to them, whispering a promise to herself. She would rise. And back inside the Starlight Club, Adrian Cross stared at the scarlet imprint she had left on the night, his bloodied hand clenched tight. For the first time, the thought of losing her carved through his pride like a blade. But Evelyn Hart no longer feared the blade. She was becoming one. Chapter 3. Fractures. The next morning, headlines blazed across every screen in Rosemont. Evelyn Hart declares divorce at Starlight Gala. Cross heiress no more? Evelyn steps out in scarlet. Adrian Cross claims, she's my wife. Clara's phone buzzed relentlessly as they sat in her office, the blinds half drawn against a gray morning. Evelyn perched on the sofa, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. Her face was everywhere. News sites, gossip blogs, industry feeds. She looked radiant in the photos, but the truth was she hadn't slept. Her chest still burned with the memory of Adrian's words, his hand around her wrist, his voice low with something that sounded too much like possession. Clara set her phone down with a decisive thud. You started a fire, Evelyn. Half the city's talking about you, and not as Adrian Cross's wife. As you. That's gold in this industry. But it's also gasoline. You need to handle this carefully. I don't regret it, Evelyn said, though her throat tightened. I couldn't keep standing there while she. Don't explain it to me, Clara interrupted, softer now. Explain it to yourself. Because the industry won't forgive hesitation. If you mean to be free, you'll need to act like it. Evelyn swallowed hard, staring into her tea. I mean it. Good, Clara said, brisk again. Because Silverlight called this morning. They want you back for a screen test. And Gabriel Knight personally told the director he believes you're right for Emberline. Evelyn blinked. He did. Yes. Which means you're not just playing defense anymore. You're playing to win. Something warmed in Evelyn's chest, steady and fierce. For the first time, the possibility of a future not tied to the Cross name felt real. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian Cross sat in his office with a storm of reporters waiting outside his building. His assistant slid the morning papers across his desk. Adrian didn't look at them. He didn't need to. He had already seen the images. Evelyn in scarlet, her chin raised, her eyes aflame. She's my wife, he had said. He had meant it, though even he wasn't sure what part of it was truth and what part pride. His grandfather's voice still rang in his ears from their call the night before. You've made a spectacle, boy. And worse, you've underestimated her. Do not let her slip away. Adrian's hand tightened on his glass. He had never underestimated Evelyn, not really. He had noticed everything, her sharp wit hidden under timidity, her instinct to survive humiliation with silence, the way her eyes sparked when she thought no one was watching. He had seen it all, and he had forced himself to ignore it. Because to see her fully meant admitting weakness. Now the world saw her too. And Adrian Cross felt something he hadn't in years, fear. The screen test for Emberline was scheduled for noon. Evelyn arrived at Rosemont Film City with Clara, her hands trembling despite the hours of preparation. Gabriel Knight himself was there, leaning against the back wall with casual grace, his presence commanding even without effort. When Evelyn entered, his gaze lit warmly. You came, he said as though he had doubted she would. Of course I did, Evelyn replied, steadying herself. The test was grueling, a scene of confrontation, heartbreak, and resilience. Evelyn poured everything into it. Her fury at Adrian, her grief at wasted years, her hunger for dignity. The lines blurred between fiction and truth until she wasn't acting at all. She was living. When it ended, silence filled the room. Then the director leaned back, her pen tapping slowly. That, she said, was unforgettable. Gabriel smiled, approval clear in his eyes. I told you, he murmured to the director before turning to Evelyn. You've got it. Evelyn's chest swelled. For the first time she believed it. But triumph never lasted long. As she left the studio, flashes blinded her. Reporters had gathered, their questions shouted like arrows. Evelyn, is it true you're leaving Crosswell Holdings with nothing? Are you and Gabriel Knight romantically involved? Does Adrian Cross know you filed for divorce? Evelyn froze, panic flickering, until Clara's voice cut sharp. No comments today. Step aside. Yet before they could push through, a familiar car slid to the curb. A sleek black vehicle, its tinted window lowering just enough to reveal Adrian's piercing gaze. The crowd erupted. Cameras surged. Mr. Cross. Mr. Cross. Is this about your wife? Adrian ignored them, his voice low but audible. Evelyn. Get in the car. Her stomach flipped. She stood frozen, the eyes of Rosemont burning into her back. Clara's hand gripped her arm. "You don't owe him this," she whispered. But Adrian's gaze locked on hers, unyielding. For a breath, the world seemed to hold its breath. And then Evelyn stepped back. "No," she said firmly, loud enough for the cameras. "I'm not getting in." Gasps rippled. Adrian's expression barely changed, but his jaw clenched, the only sign of a blow landed. Evelyn turned away, walked with Clara into the studio lot, her heels sharp against the pavement. Every camera captured it, the wife refusing the husband. The war had gone public. That night, Evelyn sat in her small apartment, the one she had rented quietly weeks before, her secret escape. Boxes still lined the walls, unpacked. But here at least the air was hers. No marble walls, no cross name weighing down her shoulders. She curled onto the couch, exhaustion settling deep. Yet beneath it pulsed something else, freedom. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You've made your point. But this isn't over. AC." Evelyn stared at it, heart racing. She typed, deleted, then finally wrote. "No, Adrian. It's only beginning." She set the phone down, exhaling. The night stretched quiet and uncertain, but Evelyn Hart knew one thing. She was no longer afraid to fight. Across town, Adrian poured himself another drink, but his hand trembled just slightly. He told himself it was anger. He told himself he didn't care. But the truth pressed heavier with every beat. Evelyn was slipping beyond his reach. And Adrian Cross had never lost anything he truly wanted. The fallout from the Starlight Club and Evelyn's public refusal echoed louder than either of them anticipated. Every major outlet replayed the footage. Adrian Cross standing in the rain of camera flashes, jaw clenched, his wife walking away. Commentators dissected her red dress, her words, his silence. Some called her brave, others reckless. But no one called her invisible anymore. For Evelyn, the week unfolded in a blur of interviews, agency meetings, and unexpected offers. Clara fielded calls non-stop, shoving contracts across cafe tables while Evelyn tried to catch her breath. She had wanted freedom, but she hadn't expected the world to notice so quickly. The gardener's daughter had become the woman of the hour. But with recognition came venom. Serena Ward was everywhere too, on talk shows, in glossy spreads, hinting at her closeness to Adrian, casting barbed shadows on Evelyn's name. Poor Evelyn Hart. A charity marriage. A girl playing dress-up. Evelyn clipped each article and tucked them into a drawer. They didn't sting as they once had. Not when her screen test had turned heads, not when directors were murmuring her name, not when Gabriel Knight himself had said, "You've got it." Still, the whispers pressed like gnats, relentless. Adrian Cross, meanwhile, waged his own silent war. In the high towers of Crosswell Holdings, board members questioned his control. His grandfather summoned him daily, each conversation a blade. "You've allowed her to define the narrative," Edward Cross snapped one evening. "She's shaping herself into the independent queen the city loves, while you stand painted as the tyrant husband. Do you understand the optics, Adrian? You'll lose more than her, you'll lose credibility." Adrian's reply was curt. "I haven't lost her yet." But he had no strategy. Only a gnawing awareness that Evelyn's absence hollowed his world. He had built his empire on calculation, but she defied calculation. She burned, unpredictable, and the more she pulled away, the more his composure cracked. At night, he found himself staring at the necklace she had left on the dresser. Diamonds cold, discarded. A symbol of everything he had done wrong. 2 nights later, Evelyn attended her first industry gala as more than a shadow. The Rosemont Film Guild held its autumn celebration in the Grand Hall of the City Museum, glass ceilings arching over marble floors. Clara insisted she wear another red dress, a deeper crimson velvet that shimmered like embers. "You're not just attending," Clara said as they arrived. "You're arriving." And she did. Cameras lit her path, murmurs chased her steps. For once, the name Cross wasn't the headline, her own name was. Evelyn Hart. Gabriel Knight found her near the exhibit of modern art, his tux impeccable, his smile warm. "You wear freedom well," he said lightly, offering her a glass of champagne. She accepted, her cheeks warming. "I'm still learning." "Then keep learning," Gabriel said. His gaze softened, almost protective. "The industry will try to shape you. Don't let them. Be your own story." Evelyn's heart fluttered, not with romance, but with the rare gift of being seen without condescension. She was about to reply when the air shifted, the kind of subtle hush that signaled a predator had entered the room. "Adrian." He strode into the hall in a black tuxedo, every line of his body taut with restrained fury. Conversations faltered as people turned. His presence was magnetic, dangerous. His eyes locked on Evelyn instantly, searing through the crowd. Clara hissed, "Ignore him. Don't give him the stage." But Adrian was already crossing the floor, his gaze fixed. Guests parted, whispers rising like smoke. Evelyn straightened, her pulse hammering, refusing to back away. He stopped before her, towering, immaculate, the scent of smoke and cedar surrounding him. "Evelyn," he said, voice low but carrying. "Adrian," she replied, matching his calm. "You shouldn't be here without me." Her laugh was soft-edged. "You don't own me." Gasps rippled. Cameras clicked. Gabriel stepped forward, protective, but Adrian's hand lifted subtly, warning him back. His gaze never left Evelyn. "You think you're free," Adrian said, quieter now, for her alone. "But freedom isn't walking away. Freedom is knowing where you belong." "And I don't belong to you," she answered, her voice steady, though her chest trembled. His jaw tightened. For a moment, the mask cracked. Something raw flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or desperation. Then the mask slid back and he inclined his head slightly, a gesture of withdrawal that fooled no one. "Enjoy your evening," he said before turning away. But as he walked off, the murmur of voices confirmed what Evelyn already knew. The game had shifted. Publicly she had drawn the line. And Adrian Cross, unshakable, ruthless Adrian, had been forced to retreat. Later that night, Evelyn slipped into her apartment, exhaustion dragging at her limbs. She set her heels aside and collapsed onto the sofa, still buzzing from adrenaline. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, unease lingered. Adrian's words clung to her. "Freedom is knowing where you belong." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He won't stop. Watch your back." No signature. No explanation. But Evelyn knew instinctively who had sent it. Serena Ward. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Whether it was threat or warning, she couldn't tell. But she refused to be intimidated. She typed back only 2 words. "Try me." Across the city, Adrian stood on his balcony, cigar smoke curling around him. The night stretched quiet, but his mind roared. He replayed every second of the gala, her defiance, her beauty, Gabriel's nearness. He had meant to confront her, to drag her back into his orbit, but instead he had let her slip through again. His pride was cracking. His control unraveling. He told himself it was about power, about reputation. But deep down, in the part of him he refused to face, he knew the truth. He didn't want to lose Evelyn because he had already lost too much of himself in her absence. And Adrian Cross was not a man who accepted loss. Evelyn dreamed that night of butterflies, fragile wings beating against glass, desperate to break free. She woke with her wrist throbbing where the inked butterfly rested, as though the tattoo itself pulsed with her heartbeat. She stared at it in the dim dawn light, whispering, "I won't go back." But somewhere in Rosemont, Adrian whispered a promise of his own. "You won't get away." Chapter 4, Ashes and Embers. The days that followed blurred into a whirlwind of work and whispers. Evelyn had thrown herself into auditions, screen tests, and agency meetings with a determination that surprised even Clara. Every morning she rose in her small apartment, dressed in clothes she had chosen for herself, and walked into the city not as Adrian's wife, but as Evelyn Hart, the actress, the contender. Still, the shadow of the Cross name followed her. Outside studios, reporters pressed questions like knives. "Do you regret marrying Adrian Cross? Are you and Gabriel Knight involved romantically? Has Serena Ward been sabotaging your auditions?" Evelyn answered none of them. Silence was its own weapon. Inside, though, she battled exhaustion. Fame came fast and brutal. She had wished for visibility, now she was drowning in it. Yet she refused to falter. Not when Clara reminded her each night, every glare, every flash, every whisper, "It means they see you. Don't waste it." One morning, Clara arrived breathless at Evelyn's apartment, a folder clutched in her hand. "You've been shortlisted for Emberline," she announced, dropping the papers on the coffee table. "Final round of auditions. They're considering you and Serena Ward." Evelyn's chest tightened. Of course it was Serena. When? Tomorrow. Rosemont Film City. And listen, this is more than just a role. This is a statement. If you win it, you're not just a rising star. You're untouchable. Evelyn nodded slowly, the weight of it sinking in. "Then I'll win." Clara's eyes softened with something like pride. "That's the Evelyn I've been waiting for." At the Cross estate, Adrian faced a different kind of storm. Edward Cross summoned him into the study, the weight of generations pressing down from oil portraits on the walls. "Your bleeding power," Edward said, his voice a graveled thunder. The board is whispering. Investors are nervous. And your wife is parading around the city declaring freedom, while you stand by with your pride in pieces. Adrian's jaw tightened. She's not gone yet. She's halfway there, Edward retorted. And when she gets that role, if she gets it, you won't be able to touch her. You'll be the man who lost the only woman who had the spine to defy you. That's a story the Cross name cannot afford. Adrian said nothing, but his silence was its own admission. Edward leaned forward, eyes sharp. If you want her back, you'll have to fight for her. Not with contracts. Not with control. With something you've avoided your entire life. Truth. The words landed like stones in Adrian's chest. Truth. The one thing he had never dared to give Evelyn because truth meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant weakness. The day of the audition arrived. Evelyn dressed with care, choosing a sapphire dress. Simple, elegant, the opposite of Serena's glittering gowns. Clara adjusted her hair before they entered the studio. Remember, she whispered, they already know Serena can play beautiful. Show them you can play real. The room was tense. Serena sat poised, her smile polished, her entourage trailing. She glanced at Evelyn, her gaze sharp with disdain. Break a leg, Serena said sweetly. Thanks, Evelyn replied evenly, stepping past her. The audition scene was raw, a confrontation between two lovers torn apart by betrayal. Evelyn poured herself into it, her voice trembling with suppressed rage, her eyes glistening with heartbreak. She thought of Adrian, of years wasted in silence, of words left unsaid. The pain was real and it spilled into every line. When it ended, the room was silent. Even Serena seemed rattled. The director scribbled notes, whispered to the producers. Gabriel Knight, who had been invited as a consultant, caught Evelyn's eye and nodded once, approvingly. Outside, Serena brushed past her with a hiss. Don't think one decent performance makes you my equal. Evelyn smiled faintly. I don't. It makes me better. Serena's eyes flashed, but she said nothing more. Later that evening, Evelyn returned to her apartment, exhaustion sinking deep. She had given everything and now all she could do was wait. She curled on the couch, staring at the city lights through her window, wondering what her life would look like if she won. Her phone buzzed. A message. Meet me. Midnight. The pier. AC. Evelyn's pulse jumped. She almost ignored it, but something about the simplicity of the words stopped her. Adrian never asked. He commanded. This felt different. Hesitant. Clara would tell her not to go. Common sense screamed not to go. But Evelyn slipped on her coat anyway. The pier was quiet at midnight, the water dark and restless. Adrian stood at the end, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his expression unreadable. You came, he said. Don't sound so surprised, she replied. I thought you expected me to follow orders. His mouth tightened. Not tonight. They stood in silence, the wind tugging at her hair, the waves lapping below. At last he spoke. I saw your audition. She blinked. How? I have ways, he said simply. His gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. You were extraordinary. Heat flushed her cheeks, but she steeled herself. Don't say that just because you're afraid of losing me. I am afraid, he admitted quietly, the words dragged from him like confession. I've built my life on control. But with you, I can't control anything. And it terrifies me. Evelyn's breath caught. He had never spoken like this before. No armor, no arrogance. Just raw truth. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Then let me go, Adrian. If you really care, let me be free. His hand clenched at his side as though battling himself. I can't, he whispered. Because somewhere along the way I stopped seeing you as duty. And I started seeing you as the only thing I can't bear to lose. The words hit her like fire and ice. Her heart surged, then recoiled. She wanted to believe him, but years of coldness weighed heavy. Then prove it, she said at last. Not with control. Not with power. With truth. Until then, I'm still walking away. She turned, her heels striking against the wooden planks, leaving him standing alone against the restless water. Adrian stared after her, the city lights burning like judgment. For the first time, Adrian Cross wondered if power was worth anything without the woman who had just demanded his truth. And for the first time, Evelyn Hart walked away not with fear, but with fire in her chest. The following morning, Evelyn awoke with the echo of Adrian's words still pressing against her chest. The only thing I can't bear to lose. She had walked away, yes, but her resolve trembled beneath the weight of that confession. She hated that he still had the power to shake her. Clara noticed immediately. You look like a woman who's been rattled, she said as she breezed into the apartment, balancing 2 lattes and a stack of papers. I'm fine, Evelyn replied quickly, too quickly. Clara raised an eyebrow, setting the coffee in front of her. Fine women don't sound like they're trying to convince themselves. Did he contact you? Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. We talked. Talked, Clara repeated, her tone skeptical. That man doesn't talk. He dictates. What did he say? Evelyn sipped her coffee, stalling. He admitted he's afraid of losing me. Clara's expression softened, but only slightly. And you're wondering if that's love or possession. Evelyn lowered her gaze. I don't know anymore. Clara reached across the table, covering Evelyn's hand with her own. Then don't decide yet. Let the work decide for you. You've got momentum. Use it. Don't let him drag you back into his orbit until you know who you are. Evelyn nodded slowly. Clara was right. The world was finally seeing her, not as Adrian's shadow but as Evelyn Hart. She couldn't risk losing that. News from the Emberline audition arrived 2 days later. Clara rushed in, cheeks flushed, eyes alight. You got it, she shouted, waving the letter triumphantly. Evelyn froze. What? You got the lead, Evelyn? Clara pulled her into a hug. You beat Serena Ward. You're the new face of Silverlight's biggest project this year. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't breathe. The words felt surreal, too heavy and too light all at once. She had won. Not through marriage, not through family name, but through her own talent. Tears pricked her eyes as she whispered, I did it. Yes, you did, Clara said, squeezing her shoulders. This is your rebirth. Adrian doesn't own this. Serena can't touch it. This is yours. Evelyn laughed through her tears, the sound shaky but real. For the first time in years she felt alive. But triumph drew shadows. That evening, Serena Ward stormed into Rosemont's most exclusive lounge, flanked by paparazzi. Her voice was icy as she spoke to the press. It's clear Evelyn Hart's victory isn't about talent. It's about pity. About headlines. But the industry has a short memory. When her shine fades, she'll fall harder than anyone. The footage went viral within hours. Comment threads exploded, some defending Evelyn, others echoing Serena's poison. Evelyn watched it unfold from her apartment, fists clenched, her stomach twisting. Clara placed her phone down. Let her talk. Every word makes her look desperate. Don't engage. You'll have the final word on screen. Evelyn nodded, though the venom still stung. But she reminded herself of the director's words, of Gabriel's quiet nod of approval. She hadn't won by pity. She had earned this. Meanwhile, at Crosswell Holdings, Adrian studied the same footage of Serena. His jaw tightened. He knew Evelyn was strong enough to weather it, but the thought of her enduring more humiliation twisted something sharp inside him. He called his assistant. Pull every contract Serena Ward has with our subsidiaries. Find the leverage. Sir? Do it, Adrian said coldly. And make sure she understands that Evelyn Hart is not to be touched. The assistant hesitated. Should I tell Mrs. Cross? Adrian's eyes narrowed. Don't tell her anything. Because he couldn't admit the truth, not yet, that he was already shielding her from shadows she didn't even know were reaching for her. On the night of the cast announcement, Silverlight hosted a small press event. Evelyn stepped onto the stage in a tailored black dress, her smile steady despite the storm outside. Cameras flashed, questions flew, but she held her ground, answering with grace. When the director officially named her as the lead in Emberline, applause thundered. Evelyn's chest swelled, pride coursing through her veins. This was her moment. But then a voice rose from the crowd of reporters. Evelyn, will your husband Adrian Cross be supporting you in this role? The room stilled. Evelyn's smile faltered just for a second. She thought of the peer, of his confession, of the years of silence. And then she lifted her chin. My success belongs to me, she said clearly. Not to my marriage, not to my family name. To me. The applause that followed was louder than before. After the event, Gabriel found her backstage, his smile warm. You handled that beautifully. Thank you, she said, exhaling. You know, Gabriel continued, the industry will always try to define you by the man beside you. Tonight, you made it clear that's no longer the story. That takes courage. Evelyn's chest tightened. I only hope I can keep proving it. You will, Gabriel said softly. You're stronger than you know. Later that night, as Evelyn returned to her apartment, she found a small box on her doorstep. No note, no signature. Warily she carried it inside and opened it. Inside lay the diamond necklace Adrian had once given her. But the chain was broken, the clasp snapped clean. A single butterfly charm had been added, delicate and silver, dangling where the diamonds met. Evelyn's breath caught. She didn't know if it was an apology, a plea, or a warning. But she knew one thing: Adrian Cross was still reaching for her. She closed the box, her hands trembling. For the first time, she wondered if walking away would ever truly mean being free. Across the city, Adrian sat in his darkened office, staring at his phone. He had sent no message with the necklace. He couldn't find the words. But as the city lights flickered against the glass, he whispered to himself the truth he couldn't yet give her. "I love you, Evelyn. And I'll make you see it." Chapter 5. Red Curtains. The first table read for Emberline was held in a cavernous rehearsal hall at Rosemont Film City. Long wooden tables stretched under harsh lights, lined with fresh scripts. Evelyn walked in with Clara at her side, her pulse quickening as she scanned the room. This wasn't just another audition. This was reality. She was no longer a candidate, she was the lead. The cast was already gathering. Gabriel Knight greeted her with his familiar, disarming warmth. "Our leading lady," he said with a smile, pulling out the chair beside him. "Ready to begin?" Evelyn forced herself to breathe to match his calm. "I think so." She opened her script, fingers trembling slightly. Around her, voices murmured, papers shuffled, but inside her head was silence, heavy, expectant. Clara squeezed her shoulder before stepping back, her silent message clear. "You belong here." The director began with introductions, then dove straight into the script. The story unfolded: love, betrayal, resilience. Lines that mirrored Evelyn's own life more than she cared to admit. When her turn came, she read with steady precision, her voice cutting into the room with quiet strength. Every word, every pause felt alive. When she finished, the room was hushed. Gabriel looked at her, his eyes glowing with approval. The director smiled faintly. "That," she said, "is why you're here." Evelyn's chest swelled. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was performing for validation. She felt like she was performing because it was who she was. But outside the walls of Film City, the narrative remained volatile. Gossip columns dissected every move, every glance between her and Gabriel. Rumors swirled. Are Evelyn Hart and Gabriel Knight more than co-stars? Does Adrian Cross still hold power over her? Adrian read every headline, though he told himself he didn't care. In truth, each mention of Gabriel's name alongside hers struck him like a blow. He remembered the look on her face at the gala, the fire in her eyes when she had refused him in front of cameras. That fire now seemed to burn brighter in Gabriel's direction. He had tried to convince himself it was pride, that he only hated the idea of losing control. But late at night, staring at the broken necklace on his desk, he knew the truth. Jealousy gnawed at him. Jealousy and something far more dangerous, fear of losing the only person who had ever made him feel vulnerable. At the second table read, Serena Ward arrived uninvited. She swept into the hall with calculated grace, a smile plastered across her face as if she belonged there. Whispers rippled through the cast. "Serena," the director said sharply. "This is a closed rehearsal." "I know," Serena purred. "I just wanted to wish Evelyn luck. It's such a heavy responsibility carrying a project of this scale. I'd hate to see her crumble." Evelyn met her gaze calmly. "Don't worry about me, Serena. Worry about yourself. Your last film barely lasted a week in theaters." The jab landed clean. Snickers rippled around the room. Serena's smile faltered, but she leaned in close enough for only Evelyn to hear. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. Adrian won't let you keep it." Evelyn's stomach tightened, but she forced her face into serenity. "He doesn't get to decide that anymore." Serena swept out, her perfume lingering like smoke. But Evelyn felt the warning like a weight. Adrian's shadow loomed, no matter how far she tried to step. Later that week, Clara insisted they attend the Rosemont Arts Foundation Gala. "It's not optional," she said firmly as they dressed in Evelyn's apartment. "This is where reputations are cemented. Show them you're not a flash in the pan." Evelyn slipped into a midnight blue gown, the silk flowing like water, her hair pinned elegantly at her nape. She stared at her reflection, wondering at the transformation. She no longer saw the timid girl hidden in Adrian's mansion. She saw a woman who had carved her own stage. The gala was a blur of chandeliers and champagne, critics and producers. Gabriel found her again, guiding her through conversations with ease. His presence steadied her, but it also fueled the whispers. Cameras lingered on them, hungry for a story. And then, as though fate itself conspired, Adrian arrived. The air shifted the moment he entered, commanding attention without effort. Dressed in a charcoal suit, his gaze scanned the room until it locked on Evelyn. Their eyes collided across the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos, and the world seemed to narrow to just them. Gabriel leaned down, murmuring, "Do you want me to walk you out?" "No," Evelyn said, her voice steady though her pulse thundered. "I can handle him." Adrian approached, the crowd parting instinctively. Whispers rose. The estranged husband. The wife who walked away. The scene was theater, and they were its unwilling stars. "Evelyn," he said when he reached her, his voice low, measured. "Adrian," she replied, matching his calm. "You look—" He stopped, searching for words. For once, he seemed uncertain. "You look remarkable." Her lips curved, not in gratitude but in challenge. "I've always been remarkable. You just never looked closely enough." The sting landed. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Instead, he turned his gaze on Gabriel, a silent warning flashing between them. Gabriel didn't flinch. The tension thickened until Clara intervened, sliding between them with practiced ease. "Smile for the cameras," she whispered fiercely. "Give them nothing but mystery." And so they did, three figures locked in a triangle of fire, every flashbulb capturing the storm. Later, when the gala ended and the night cooled, Evelyn stood alone on the museum steps, the city lights flickering in the distance. For a moment, she let herself breathe. She had survived the night, the whispers, the glare of Adrian's presence. But as her car pulled up, she spotted him again, standing across the street, hands in his pockets, watching. He didn't approach, didn't speak. He only looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Regret? Longing? Possession? Her heart twisted. She turned away, stepping into the car. As the door closed, she whispered to herself, "I'm free. I have to be free." Yet deep inside, she knew freedom was not simple. Not when the man she was trying to escape had finally begun to fight for her. The night after the gala, Evelyn lay awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling. The image of Adrian standing across the street would not leave her. He hadn't said a word, hadn't made a scene, just watched. That unsettled her more than his usual coldness. Adrian silent was Adrian dangerous. By morning, the gossip cycle had already branded the gala the Cross confrontation. Photos of Evelyn between Gabriel and Adrian filled headlines. Some called her enviable, caught between two powerful men. Others painted her as a schemer, using both for fame. Evelyn skimmed the articles with a weary eye before tossing the tablet aside. "Let them talk," Clara said when she arrived with croissants. "Noise fades. What matters is your performance in Emberline. That's what will silence them." Evelyn nodded, but her chest still burned. She had built a fragile sense of independence, and yet Adrian's shadow stretched into every corner of her new life. Even Gabriel's kind presence, steady and affirming, risked being twisted into another weapon against her. The first day of rehearsals on set arrived. Evelyn stepped onto the soundstage with nerves tingling like electricity. The set was enormous, an elaborate reconstruction of a small village, complete with cobblestone streets and glowing lanterns. Crew members bustled about, cameras swung, lighting rigs blazed. Gabriel approached, handing her a copy of the revised script. "Our big scene today," he said with a grin. "The confession." Evelyn exhaled. "Right. No pressure." He smiled gently. "Pressure makes diamonds." She almost laughed. How ironic that he used the same metaphor tied so closely to Adrian, to the necklace she had abandoned. But Gabriel's words didn't sting. They steadied. When the cameras rolled, Evelyn gave herself to the role completely. Her voice cracked with heartbreak, her body trembled with suppressed fury, her eyes glistened with the rawness of betrayal. The director called, "Cut," and the silence that followed was reverent. Crew members exchanged glances, impressed. Gabriel clapped her shoulder, his voice low with approval. "You were brilliant." Her chest swelled with something fierce. This was her place. Not Adrian's estate, not Crosswell Holdings. Here, beneath the red curtains in the heat of the lights, alive in her craft. But Adrian was never far. That evening, as Evelyn left the studio, a sleek black car slid into place beside her. The window lowered. "Get in," Adrian said. His tone wasn't cold this time. It was quiet, almost pleading. "I'm not your prisoner," she said sharply, clutching her bag. "You're not," he agreed. "But I need to speak with you. Privately." Her instinct screamed to walk away. Yet something in his eyes, strained, unguarded, made her pause. Against her better judgment, she opened the door and slid inside. The car pulled away, gliding through the city until it stopped at a quiet riverside. Adrian dismissed the driver, leaving them alone in the silence of the night. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. I watched your performance today. Her breath caught. How? I invested in the production through proxies. I see everything. Her stomach twisted. So that's it. Even my freedom has your fingerprints on it? No, he said quickly, almost desperately. I didn't do it to control you. I did it to protect you. Serena's connections run deep. I won't let her destroy you. Evelyn shook her head, anger rising. You still don't understand. I don't need your protection. I need your respect. He flinched at the word as though it struck deeper than anger ever had. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, I don't know how to give you that. But I want to learn. The confession hung heavy in the car, raw and unpolished. Evelyn searched his face, half expecting to find manipulation. Instead, she found something that looked startlingly like sincerity. Then start by letting me live my life, she said softly. Stop pulling strings. Stop watching from shadows. If you want me to believe you care, let me breathe. Adrian's hand tightened into a fist on his knee, the war between pride and vulnerability etched across his features. At last he nodded once. I'll try. Evelyn opened the door before he could say more. That's all I can ask. As she stepped into the night air, she realized her heart was racing, not just with anger but with the terrifying possibility that Adrian might actually mean it. Days passed. Evelyn buried herself in filming, her confidence growing with each scene. Critics began murmuring, word leaking from the set that Emberline might become a breakout masterpiece. Clara's phone never stopped buzzing. But shadows lingered. Anonymous threats appeared in Evelyn's inbox, clipped words warning her to step aside to know her place. Clara suspected Serena's camp, though no proof surfaced. Evelyn refused to let fear drive her off course. Then one evening, after a long shoot, Evelyn returned to her apartment to find her door ajar. Panic spiked. She pushed it open cautiously. Inside, nothing was stolen, but the necklace box lay on her table, open, the butterfly charm glinting under the dim light. She froze. She hadn't left it that way. Her phone buzzed. A single message appeared. You can't escape what you are. No sender. No clue. Her breath came fast, fear mixing with fury. She dialed Clara first, then the police. But even as she filed the report, one truth gnawed at her. This wasn't Adrian's doing. His pride would never stoop to threats. This was someone else. Someone who wanted her to break. And for a fleeting, chilling moment, Evelyn wondered if Serena Ward's envy had sharpened into something far more dangerous. Across the city, Adrian sat in his office, unaware of the intrusion but restless nonetheless. He had promised Evelyn space, promised to try. Yet the silence from her gnawed at him. He wanted to storm her world, to remind her she belonged with him. But he remembered her words, I need your respect. So he sat in restraint, his knuckles white around a glass, and whispered into the night, I'll earn it. One way or another. In her apartment, Evelyn lay awake, the broken necklace glinting from the table. Fear pressed heavy, but beneath it, defiance burned stronger. Whoever wanted her silenced would fail. She had survived humiliation, heartbreak, and the coldest of marriages. She would survive this too. As dawn bled into the city, she rose, packed her bag for the set, and whispered to her reflection, I'm not breaking. Not this time. Her reflection gazed back, tired, fierce, unyielding. The butterfly on her wrist gleamed, its wings a promise. Evelyn Hart was no longer the woman who endured. She was the woman who fought. Thank you for listening to Silent Heart Story, where every love that couldn't be said is finally heard. If today's story touched something quiet in you, a memory, a secret wish, or simply the feeling of being seen, then stay with us. Subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a heartbeat. Every day, a new whisper awaits.